Hey guys, I'm Jacob and you're watching the Prepper's Bunker Outdoors. This is a Christian conservative prepping and survival channel with a bit of military tactics and background. If you'd like to support this channel, please check out the description box below. We have my websites, beachandtactical.com, where I sell handmade rifle slings, custom to order, and Exodus knife and tool. Our knives are made in the USA and are made to be practical. All right, this month, for the month of April, our sponsors is Black Bear Custom Kydex, because I love his Kydex work. So you can check him out in the link below for the month of April. We have a Patreon, we have affiliate links. Also, check out Kentuckiana Gunworks for locally made gun oils and grease. They're absolutely fantastic. And you can use the coupon code TPBO for a discount. Check that out. Let's get you right back to the content. So what we're looking at, as you know, is the new BSH3 from BeaverCraft. And I came across this particular knife on Amazon because I had in the past already purchased a BeaverCraft hook knife, and I was very impressed with the hook knife for the cost. This really attracted my attention. At the time they didn't have knives, obviously now they do. They have the BSH1, 2, and 3. These caught my attention because of their price point. I mean, we've got an absolute Mora competing price point on a knife made in Ukraine, with a full tang fixed blade with a sheath, square spine, and there's some stuff about this knife that's rather unique. So we're going to go over it. I'm going to talk to you about the knife itself, the blade, the handle, and the sheath. And I want to clarify that in this video I'm going to be talking about these things in contrast to the cost of the knife. So there are certainly going to be some things on this blade where I will give it a pass, where a more expensive knife I would not. Starting with the blade, we've got, normally I would call this looks like a Scandi grind with a micro bevel. In my opinion, a Scandi grind with a micro bevel is a low saber grind. Being zero ground, in my opinion, again, is a requirement for a grind actually being a Scandi grind. So we've got a low saber grind here, high carbon steel blade. It came fantastically sharp. This steel is a high carbon steel, 1064, not one that we often see in America in knives because of its relatively lower carbon content, but that should mean that strength is absolutely stellar. And so normally with a low saber grind like this, with a micro bevel, that would be a negative because usually that would mean a thick edge. However, with this with this stock thickness, the edge that you get is nice and thin. It carves exceptionally well. It's really hard to find knives that are this thin. If you look up close at the micro bevel and the grinds, they are not perfect. However, the edge is straight, the edge is consistent. So in my opinion, again, for the price, not an issue. It's more of an aesthetic thing. No big deal. Let's talk about the handle. Again, a full tang knife here. Focus, camera, focus. We've got a full tang knife. I believe that these were advertised as walnut. It's going to be really embarrassing if I'm incorrect, but I'm fairly sure I'm correct off the top of my head here. The finish on them is fine. Again, at the price point, no real issue on the finish on the scales. They are nicely contoured. I don't have a lot of hot spots or anything bothering my hand. I will say little things like you see here how the scales match at the spine. They are at a different height here, not exactly the same on one side as the other. Price point thing. For the price, you could get aftermarket scales. Obviously, they're removable. You could make aftermarket scales, but in hand, it's not an issue. Once again, I will say the skinny butt near the pommel here, I believe causes a bit of hand fatigue for me, where my pinky is, I'm squeezing, and I have a little bit of space here, which makes me squeeze even harder to kind of get a grip back there. I think that we need a little bit more height in the handle back here. The sheath, this is the thinnest and most flexible leather that I have ever felt being used on a sheath. Now, to give that a little bit of clarification, there may be 10 million knives out there with a leather sheath that's this thin. I have been spoiled with really good knives, basically as a rule. However, it's not necessarily a downside. You've got a little old school clasp here. It's not necessarily a downside. The sheath holds the knife. You've got a dangler. It holds on your belt. Long term, if this falls apart, that will be something to consider, but I don't necessarily think that it will. I think that that the sheath is absolutely fine. So overall, guys, I have been impressed with this knife. Yes, it is the price point of the blade that caught my interest at first. Now, they did send me this knife to review, and I do intend on reviewing it side by side with some other budget knives, and I think that it will do quite well. What it has going for it, you've got high carbon steel that I think is going to be plenty tough. 1064 has a potential for incredible toughness. Now, they advertised it at above 60 on the Rockwell scale. At a certain point, more hardness with a steel like this does not necessarily mean more edge holding. Is that going to be an issue? I don't know. I don't think we're going to have a problem with edge holding in the woods. It's not as important in the woods because we don't have as many abrasives out here. Are we going to have an issue with strength though with the higher hardness? Probably not once again. All in all, it's got a lot going for it. Like I said, in the thinness, it's not often in the US that we see a knife thinner than 1/8 of an inch. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Bear Forest Knives does a simple and 1/16 inch, which is really, really cool. There are a couple other people that do very thin knives, but it's rare on a production knife to see a bushcraft knife that is this thin, and I think that's fantastic. Overall, as a package, I think that this is great. Is this only a knife for someone who's getting their first bushcraft knife? Not necessarily. Is it only a knife to be a beater or to be thrown in a bug out bag? Not necessarily. I have some very, very expensive knives and I have been enjoying using it. However, are there some things that could be done, in my opinion, that could make this knife better potentially without increasing the price? And in my opinion, a little bit of changes on that handle would accomplish that just fine. But I would not only be absolutely fine carrying this knife, I would have no hesitation handing this to my son or bringing it to one of my bushcraft classes that I teach as a loaner knife and letting somebody learn on it, beat on it. I don't think it's going to fail, but if it does fail at the price point, it's not the end of the world. And I let a lot of people borrow knives in my bushcraft classes. If you saw some of the things that people do to knives when they're borrowing a knife in a class, regardless of how good the knife is or isn't, you might be thinking about a more affordable knife. All right, so all in all, I like it. I'll put a link to it in the description box below. This is, again, just a first impressions video. I've done a bit of batoning, I've done some feather sticks, I've thrown some sparks, I've made some fires. But over about a year, I'll have people borrowing this knife, running it in classes. I'll continue to use it, and I'm also going to put it head-to-head against some other affordable knives. And so I think that for our long-term review, we're going to get a lot of potential value out of this. I hope that those guys continue making knives. They make a great product, and they make a lot of other cool carving stuff that you can check out as well. Like I said, I invested in the company, and I think I kind of want a full carving kit from them as I get more into some bushcraft and carving. That's all I got. Hope you have a blessed day. Thank you for watching. Please check out the description box below, and I'll talk to you in the comments section below.